What's up, beautiful people? So about a year or two ago, I was making a series of videos here on the channel where I was essentially covering one distinct fact about every single Pokemon in existence, and I sort of broke it down by generation, where in one video I would cover a fact about every Kanto Pokemon, then the next video I'd cover a fact about every Johto Pokemon, and then so on and so forth until I eventually covered every single Pokemon in existence at that time. However, as is the nature of the Pokemon franchise, brand new Pokemon are always right around the corner, and last year, of course, we saw the introduction of a bunch of completely brand new Pokemon in the Galar region for Pokemon Sword and Shield. And because those previous videos were so much fun to make and you guys really seemed to like them as well, I naturally, of course, had to go ahead and cover a fact about every single Galar Pokemon as well. There really isn't anything more to say to it than that, but before we get started, there are a couple key points I need to go over. Because of the sheer amount of Galar Pokemon that were introduced, along with the amount of time it takes me to cover a fact about them all, I am going to be splitting this video up into two parts. In this video today, I will be covering the first 40 or so Galar Pokemon, and then a week from today, I will be covering the rest of the Galar Pokemon. However, this is where we end up running into a little bit of a problem, because just as I was getting all of this stuff together and I was ready to record these videos and put them out, we got the announcement of the Pokemon Sword and Shield expansion pass, which of course is introducing brand new Pokemon. So yeah, that kind of threw a wrench into my plans, to say the least. But frankly, because I do not want to wait basically an entire year to put these videos out when I already have them ready to go right now for the sake of just maybe 5 or so new Pokemon that we might get in the expansions, I decided I am going to go ahead and do this right now anyway and cover every Galar Pokemon that we know of so far, and then later on down the line when we actually have all the Pokemon from the expansion, I will do a roundup, tying up loose ends type of video that I will link in the second part of this video that's coming a week from today, so you'll still be able to watch them all in pretty easy succession. With all of that out of the way though, why don't we go ahead and just get to it? These are facts about every single Galar Pokemon that we know of so far, part 1. Starting off, of course, with Grookey. Grookey, as well as the other Galar starters, have an interesting connection with one another because not only are they all exactly 1 foot in height, but their weights are also, interestingly, 1.1 pounds apart from each other, as Grookey is 11 pounds, and then down 1.1 pounds from that is Scorbunny at 9.9, and down 1.1 more from that is Sobble at 8.8. When it comes to its evolution Thwackey, both of Thwackey's dex entries talk about how fast it can beat out drum beats, yet it actually has the lowest speed of any of the middle evolutions of the starter Pokemon by a pretty significant margin, being 80 base speed compared to 90 and 94 for Raboot and Drizzile. Their final evolution Rillaboom, though, actually has the highest base attack stat of any fully evolved starter Pokemon. Meanwhile, the fire starter Scorbunny actually shares its species name with Baniri and Lopunny, as they are all known as the rabbit Pokemon. Its evolution Raboot's ability is Blaze, and its base stat total also just so happens to be 420. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Cinderace has a new hidden ability that was introduced in Generation 8 that is known as Libero, and this is actually its signature ability. With this ability, Cinderace is actually able to be the same type as the move that it is currently using, and this is actually a direct reference to its football, aka soccer, inspirations. Because this is actually a reference to the libero position in football and soccer, which basically acts as a sweeper type of player that is able to go pretty much anywhere on the field that they want, which obviously parallels the type-changing mechanics of this ability. Sobble, as the water lizard Pokemon, actually completes an unofficial trio of lizard starter Pokemon, with Trico being the grass lizard and Charmander being a fire lizard. You might argue that Charmander is a salamander, but it literally evolves into 2 Pokemon with chameleon and lizard in their names and is known as the lizard Pokemon, so I'm gonna count it. Drizzyle's Shiny swaps the green on its body for pink, and the rest of its line uses pink in their shinies as well. This is likely a nod to the fact that in the days of Gens 2 through 5, many blue Pokemon were given pink shinies because that color palette happened to be the next color palette in the game's code for the sprites. But from Gen 6 onwards, when the game started using 3D models, shinies were more purposefully given their colors by the designers themselves, likely meaning that this is a reference to that fact since the Drizzile family are all primarily blue in color. Inteleon is tied with Sceptile for the lowest base HP of any fully evolved starter Pokemon, with just a 70 base stat in that category. Squavit is actually based on the eastern grey squirrel, who is an invasive species that was brought to the UK during the late 1800s, who is now unfortunately taking the native red squirrel to almost near extinction. Likewise, its evolution Greedent might actually be based on that native red squirrel due to Greedent's red coloring compared to Squavit's grey coloring, meaning that both stages of this line represent an interesting relationship that is going on with the squirrels in the UK. The Pokemon Arrokuda shares its species name with Pidgey, Spearow, and Natu, who are all known as the tiny bird Pokemon. An interesting one about its evolution Corvisquire is that along with Arrokuda, these are the very first non-legendary Pokemon to be a pure flying type, as prior to this, the only one in existence was Tornadus. Corviknight, due to its appearance and role as the primary mode of air transport in the Galar region, is most likely based on the flying black bird sprite that was used in Gens 3 through 6 when the player flew from place to place, which was meant to represent the player's own Pokemon. If you take a close look at the Pokemon Blipbug, you might actually realize that it is meant to be based on the phrase bookworm, as not only is it a larva type of creature, but it also has large eyes that are meant to represent glasses and feelers that are meant to represent a bow tie, which completes the look of a stereotypical nerd who is someone that might be classified as a bookworm. When it comes to its evolution Dottler, no other Pokemon has the same type combination of Bug Psychic as Dottler or its evolution Orbeetle. Speaking of Orbeetle, Orbeetle's base stat total of 505 is actually the highest base stat total of any starting bug Pokemon. Thanks to Nickit and Thievel's introduction, their species of the fox Pokemon is actually the second most abundant of any Pokemon category, with 7 total members. Interestingly, this actually makes up 3 different families, the Nickit, Vulpix, and Fennekin families, and every single one of them has at least one member whose shiny form is gray in color. Its evolution Thievel actually has a very interesting aspect to its design because its facial features actually resemble the appearance of the famous Guy Fawkes mask, which is most likely an intentional pun on the word fox, as it sounds very similar to fox, which is obviously what Thievel is based on, in addition to being something that a burglar might wear, which is also what Thievel is based on. The Pokemon Gossifleur actually shares its species name with Lilligant, who are both known as the flowering Pokemon. Not only that though, because Gossifleur is also tied with Ferroseed for having the lowest base speed stat of any grass type Pokemon. The Pokemon Eldegoss, as well as its pre-evolution Gossifleur, were conceptualized as early as mid-2016, before Pokemon Sun and Moon in Generation 7 had even released during one of Shigeru Omori's press tours to the UK, where very early development on Pokemon Sword and Shield began. An ironic fact about the Pokemon Wooloo is that Wooloo is unable to learn the move Rollout, despite being round and literally rolling around as one of the primary methods of its transportation. An interesting fact about the design of its evolution Dubwool is that due to its shape and the pattern on its wool, it is most likely partially based on a soccer and/or football due to the sport's massive popularity in the UK. The signature move of the Pokemon Chewtle, as well as its evolution Drednaw, is known as Jaw Lock, and an interesting thing about this signature move is that it actually originated from the TCG. While widely reported that Drednaw gets its name partially from Dreadnought, a type of warship, one thing you might not have known is the Dreadnought category of ships actually got their name from one ship in particular that was originally called the HMS Dreadnought, created by the Royal Navy, which hails from the UK, providing even more meaning to the origin of the Galar-based Drednaw. Yamper shares its species name with Growlithe, Lillipup, and Rockruff, who are all known as the puppy Pokemon. It's possible that Boltund's Japanese name, Parusuwan, might actually have a very interesting reference hidden within it, in addition to it coming from the words pulse and barking. As originally noted by Helix Chamber on Twitter, it's possible that this could be referencing two of Game Freak's previous games and the earliest ones in their history, the first one being Pulse Man and another being Mario and Wario. If you were to combine the two titles by taking the word Pulse Man and flipping the M in it over to a W as in Mario and Wario, you would get a name that very heavily resembles Boltund's Japanese name, meaning, like I said, this could be a very well hidden and very interesting reference. Moving on though, Roly-Coly is the only Pokemon that has Flash Fire as its ability that is not actually Fire type itself. Karkel's dex entry in Pokemon Shield mentions that it is able to travel over 18 miles an hour, and the flames that it breathes exceed 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, which is likely a reference to the fact that it evolves from Roly-Coly at level 18. It's possible that Colossal's bluish shiny color, as well as the shinies of the rest of its line, are inspired by Blue Coal. Blue Coal was a trademarked brand of anthracite, which is said to be the highest ranking type of coal due to its many good qualities, which actually parallels quite nicely with the concept of shiny Pokemon. Applin's design is obviously based on the common image of a worm being inside an apple, but what you might not have known is that it's also a pun of sorts as well, as the term worm is also a term that is used in Europe for a type of dragon, which explains why this Pokemon is part dragon type. Its evolution Flapple, as well as Appleton, both have Gigantamax forms who are absolutely identical to one another. However, interestingly, they are still treated as different Pokemon because they both have distinct Pokedex entries and G-Max moves. Speaking of Appleton, its Japanese name, Taruparu, comes from the combination of a number of different words, one of them being tart, which is actually ironic considering it evolves from the use of the sweet apple, not the tart apple. Silicobra's species name as well as its actual name in Japanese are essentially the exact same thing, as its species name in Japanese, just like in English, is the sand snake Pokemon, and its actual name in Japanese, Tsunahebi, also literally translates to sand snake. Despite only being 144 pounds, Sandaconda's dex entry says that when it contracts its body, over 220 pounds of sand sprays from its nose. If it ever runs out of sand, it becomes disheartened. The Pokemon Cramorant actually has a very interesting name in Japanese, as not only is it a palindrome, but it literally is oo, as in the letters U, and it actually somehow ends up being an accurate representation of what Cramorant is as a Pokemon at the same time, because in Japanese, it comes from the sound of choking or gasping and the word for cormorant, which is the bird that Cramorant is based on. Speaking of Cramorant, the Pokemon Arrokuda was actually first shown as part of Cramorant's official reveal, but remained unnamed and unrevealed itself until the actual release of Pokemon Sword and Shield. Its evolution Barrascuda, meanwhile, actually has the highest base speed stat of any water-type Pokemon. Moving on, the Pokemon Toxel is the only Pokemon with a base stat total of 242, and it's also the only Pokemon recognized as a baby Pokemon since Generation 4. And last but not least, we have the final Pokemon for this first part of the video, Toxtricity. Not only is Toxtricity, as well as its pre-evolution Toxel, the only Pokemon with the Poison Electric typing, but Toxtricity is also the only Pokemon with a base stat total of 502, making it a pretty unique Pokemon overall. And there we have it, everybody. Those were facts about every single Galar Pokemon so far, part 1. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I really hope you guys learned something new about some of the brand new Galar Pokemon. And if you did, be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and let me know down in the comments below what you think of these facts, or if you have any more other facts about these Pokemon that you would like to add as well. If you are new to the channel as well, be sure to subscribe for more Pokemon content all the time, and if you would like to support the channel further, you can do so by checking out my Spotify and giving my Pokemon remixes a listen there, as well as checking out my Pokemon Cardinal project if you haven't yet. With all of that being said though, I will be back on Tuesday for yet another video, so be sure to hit that notification bell so you can know when it goes live. And with all of that being said, I hope you know I love you guys very much, and until the next one, as always, I will smell you guys later.